Hello.
Hello.
How
For
are
that
you?
funky countdown music.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? I was doing a little dance in the green room while the music was coming on. I really hope
Me
that's
too.
visible to anybody but me.
Yeah, I was doing a bit of moves.
Well,
How are
hello.
you?
I'm
Are
good,
you
thank
good?
you. Yes, good. So we are very excited to welcome everyone to episode 1 of Perfect Pair. So this is our new webinar series where we look at the perfect partnership between software and service. And I'm very excited to introduce the two of us and to get stuck into episode 1, which is going to focus on operations, which is my favorite subject, obviously. Caroline, do you want to introduce yourself first and then I'll introduce myself?
I will, yes, indeed. So I'm Caroline Sumners. I am a fractional CMO. I have been in marketing for 20 odd years and fractional for 10. So that's me.
And I am Millie Barker. I'm a fractional COO. So I have also about 20-ish years of experience in organizational design, cross-functional project management, all of those juicy operations things. But I've only been a fractional for a couple of years. So I was interim for about 4 years, and then the last two years I've been fractional. So it's more of a relatively newer thing for me than it is for Caroline. But I think it's I see a lot more people going fractional now, and I think there's such a huge boom in the industry. It's really exciting to see.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I feel like the word fractional has kind of come out of nowhere the last couple of years, really. And I think just to clarify, it just means part-time.
It literally is all it is. People keep asking me what's fractional. It's just the same. It's just less time.
Fraction of the time, right?
Yeah.
So it's not anything super fancy. It's just an expert part of the time instead of full time. So it just means that you can afford super experienced and knowledgeable people, but you don't necessarily need them all the time.
No, I
So
think
it's
you don't
perfect.
need them. You shouldn't. Imagine if you were working full time in an early stage company, you'd run out of things to do really quickly because you work so efficiently, having been, in marketing for such a long time and having been a fractional for such a long time. You've developed systems and processes that mean you can get things done much faster than someone who is for the same price but working full time. If you were working all of the hours in a week, you'd be like, guys, what's next?
I think but we're kind of delaying the start a bit, but I think that's potentially a bit of where the problem in misunderstanding occurs, because I feel like sometimes businesses think they need to have someone full time, and even though we try and reassure and say, but actually you don't need me full time. I can do the same amount of quality of work and strategic direction of work because of that experience, and in half the time, or you might not even need you might not need someone all that time. So I think that is something that we need to be banging the drum of in terms of education, really.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Anyway,
Say that really does lead on to today's topic of conversation, which is very much about getting more things done, because that's my favorite thing to talk about.
it is your favorite thing.
That's why no one wants to invite me to a party, because I just want to talk about getting stuff done.
I feel a bit like that with marketing, though. It's just like I feel like the roll of the eyes sometimes. It's like, oh God, here she goes again. But I'm sure they don't feel that about you, Millie. I'm sure they feel like, no.
It's passion.
Yes, exactly.
So I'll just
So
we're
kicking things off with operations, aren't we? And that is you. And so you are going to talk about your sort of favorite tool from an operations perspective, and why you feel like this tool is super, that you need it, a business really needs it, but why you need to pair it with a service person. So take it away. What tool is it?
I mean, for anyone who knows me, this is going to come as absolutely zero surprise, but I'm going to talk about Asana, because I love it so much. It is one of the most incredible tools I have ever used. I started to use it in about 2018 and it just completely changed my life. I'm like, when I like something, I really, really like that thing. And Asana is very much something that falls into that bracket for me. So I think to give a little context of why Asana is so important to the work that I do, I'll talk about a little bit about what a fractional COO actually does in an organization, because I think there's often a gap in understanding between not just what a fractional COO does, but what a COO does in general. I think, a lot of people are used to paying for CMO services or CFO or CTO, but to understand what a chief operating officer does in an organization, I think leads on to quite nicely to how Asana can help with that and how to implement that properly. So it's really just I think of it as like organizational WD-40, being a COO in an early stage company. So just helping stuff move more quickly. You're helping things be more efficient. You're helping the entire company be more productive, get more things done. But you're also pulling everything together. So when I approach an organization, I think about it from the perspective of all of the different elements as interconnected parts of a whole. So I think about the jigsaw puzzle, about the mind map of everything that comes together. And my role is to make sure that all the different bits are talking to each other and that people are collaborating on the right things, and that no department exists in a silo, but every department is important and no department is more important than the other. But it's about how those departments work together is what helps you get the right amount of things done in an organization. And that's why a tool like Asana, and I should caveat here that I love Asana and I've done a lot of research into different project management tools. Asana is my favorite because of all of that research and the time that I've spent working on it. But you don't have to use Asana. You just in my opinion, have to use a project management tool if you want to be getting the right amount of things done in an organization. And it's important to be focusing on getting the right amount of things done because time is such an expensive and limited resource in an organization. If you think about your annual salary and break that down into how much an hour of your time costs. So I often say divide your annual salary by the number of days that you're working and divide that by the number of hours in a day, and then think about that versus the price of a tool that can help you get the most out of that hour. I think you really start to see why maximizing your hour by hour efficiency is really important for focusing on the right things. So think of Asana as the second brain of your organization. Think of it as the place where you dump everything that needs to happen, but it's also the thing that's telling you this is what you need to focus on today. So whenever I start working with a COO or a founder of a company, I always say to them, like, tell me everything. Get everything out of your brain. Let's get it down onto paper. I always start with a mind map because they mirror the connections that your brain makes naturally. I say get it into a mind map. And then let's start to pick through that and see actually what do we need to focus on today? Because there's always 15,000 things you could be doing in an organization, but you shouldn't be doing all 15,000 of those. You should be doing the most important thing within the moment. Effectively, and other project management tools are effectively like blinkers for your organization to say, yeah, we've thought about everything, but today we're going to focus in on this one thing. And it's a very cost efficient way of doing that. So pricing for Asana is really cheap when you start out. So it's free for individuals. For teams, it starts at just under £10 for some of the paid features. And there are some really cool paid features. One of my favorite being that you can see different views. So something that I think is really interesting is Caroline and I have worked together on an Asana project. And I mean, I've been using Asana for quite a while. So when I said to Caroline, here's my marketing plan, it's in Asana. And I sent it to her and it was a massive list with all these different sections and different tags and subtags. And I looked at it and I was like, I can read this like the Matrix. It makes total sense to me. I needed to know exactly what I'm looking at here. And I think it's safe to say that Caroline had a less successful view.
I would say I had almost sort of like a brain explosion. I was like, what is this? But to the point on views, I'm much more comfortable with a board view, like a Kanban board view. So yeah. Once I managed to get my head around how Millie was working, well, we had probably more conversations about her Asana project plan than I'm feel comfortable admitting, to be honest,
very
because I was like, explain this to me again. How does this work? And once I then discovered, and a few other things that Millie told me about as well, like once I discovered the board, fine. Then when I discovered that you can also filter it so that once things are done, they disappear, well, that was like a game changer, because I was having to scroll down through everything to get to the things that were still live. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I don't want to go through all this. And Millie was like, well, you just add a filter. And I was just like, okay. Clearly, I don't know how to use this tool, which segues nicely into, I mean, I'm much more of a visual person. That's probably why in the past I've used Trello with the boards, but I know there's definitely limitations with that. From a cost perspective, I think it's a lot more expensive than Asana. So the views were definitely a bonus for me.
Yeah, and I think that it's a really interesting thing to focus on in implementing a tool like this, because everybody works in a different way, and that's not a bad thing. That's a very, very good thing. If we all worked in the same way, we would just have homogenous thoughts lead to homogenous actions, and we don't have different ways of thinking about things. We don't come up with the best in creativity, with the best in decision making. We should celebrate the fact that everybody works in a different way, and Asana allows you to do that by having, my list view is still kept and preserved exactly as I need it, whilst Caroline's looking at her board view in exactly the same way, and she's working in the way that she needs to, and I'm working in the way that I need to, but we're both getting the most amount of things done. And I think that's a really great way of appreciating the diversity of perspective that's so crucial to building a really innovative company. So I think the real value that a tool like this can give to an organization is the prioritization side of things. So, I often write strategies for organizations. So I have a 6-stage strategy framework that I developed myself over the last 6.5 years of being a startup COO. And it goes from your mission statement through your objectives, your key results, the projects, the tasks, and your performance management. There's so much in that, because even if you've got just 2 objectives, and say you've got 4 key results for each of those objectives, those are 8 most important things that you're meant to be working on in an organization. Say there's 10 projects per 8 key results, 80 different projects that you're working on. How are you keeping track of that? How are you making sure that you're working on the right things at the right time? And a tool like this, I think, can be really beneficial, but it's also very easy to get wrong. I've seen organizations just pay for an Asana subscription and not be able to maintain it, because it's sort of like a garden that needs pruning a little bit. You can have a bunch of tasks in there, but if everything is overdue and nothing is listed in Asana and communication is happening in different places, then it very quickly becomes another one to the pile of SaaS tools that you paid for and you don't use. I know that I certainly have quite a lot of those in Pay As You Go COO, and I'm really quite cheap when it comes to spending on things. I don't like buying tools, but you still end up with a lot of things that don't work for you. So for me, a couple of key areas where I've seen things go wrong is people pulling communication into different systems when they should all be housed in one side. So if you think about Asana as I said, the second brain of your organization, where you're feeding everything in, and it's making sure that you're having cross-functional collaboration in the right way, and that everything is visible, and which is amazing for a hybrid or a geographically diverse environment. If you're then also having conversations on Slack, and you're also having conversations in email, and you're also just, WhatsApping people, it's very easy to lose the thread of things and to pull yourself out of that tool where all the valuable information is. And I think having someone who is like me, who is very, very, I'm very data driven, I'm very process driven, and I'm very good at following instructions. If someone says to me, we do all of our communication in Asana, I'm like, great, I'm going to do all of my communication in Asana. And then all of the messages that I'm sending about a certain task are kept in one system. But it's very easy to see how that can fall apart if someone isn't there to maintain it.
How many organizations that you've worked with or do all their communication in Asana? Because honestly, it's never occurred to me until you just said that all your communication, and this is, going to make myself sound like a right idiot now, because as I'm working, I've got project management tools. I've got, like, someone might WhatsApp me, and then they might Slack me, and then so I am doing all those things that you're doing. Clearly, I need a COO. Clearly, however, how many organisations are working in that way? Because a lot of people do have Slack, and they do have all these other ways of communicating, or are they using the integrations that are built in, and that's how they're working it? I guess that's the most effective way, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think I would say, you can't ever be 100% perfect. I think if you spend, too much time thinking about the way that you've set up your systems, you're not thinking enough about actually getting the stuff done. So I think you never strive for 100% perfection. And I certainly don't do that. Like you and I, we chat in Slack sometimes when it could be something that's in Asana. And, I'm very aware of the fact that that's just a necessary way of communicating sometimes. But whenever I need to leave myself a note about something that we've discussed, I always go straight back to the Asana project to make sure that it's in there. But, I have a couple of organizations that I work with that have everything kept inside Asana, and it's such a thing of beauty. I think it comes down to a key focus. So people talk to me a lot about business as usual versus strategic work. And I always say to them, there's no difference between the two of them, because your strategy is everything that you should be doing in your organization to hit your goals. And if it's not hitting your goals, why are you doing it? So if your business as usual work isn't a part of your strategic plan to hit your goals, it's not work that you need to be doing. If something is that important that it's powering your goals, it really deserves the respect to be managed and maintained properly. And that for me is a great example of when something should be kept in Asana. So, it can come down to anything, even like you're planning an office move or something like that. An office move leads to a great environment for your staff, which is better employee retention, which is lowered cost, which is better profit margins. Key strategic goal. Keep all the communication about that task in your Asana system, which means that anyone who's participating in that thing that is very important to your bottom line is aware of all the conversations that are happening. They're aware of the fact that so-and-so did this before they went on holiday, and they can fill it in because it's in there. It's not buried in someone's Slack channel somewhere. So I think, you can't be 100% perfect, but I think if you strive for that level of transparency in the way that you're implementing your projects, I think you can save yourself a lot of trouble by making sure that, you're focusing on the right conversations at the right time in the right place. Does that answer your question?
It does. And do you think a lot of businesses simply, for whatever reason, because probably they've thought like me, they haven't thought of the larger value of it, and are just seeing it as it's how I plan my day-to-day tasks, right?
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
They don't link it back to the wider strategy. They don't link it back to all of that. They're just like, okay, Monday to Friday, what am I going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. And this leads in so nicely to a hill that I will voluntarily die on. So for everyone, Caroline's laughing because I have so many hills that I will die on, and I'm very
You have a few. I have a few as well, but you have some. Yeah.
One of the hills that I will absolutely die on is that operations is a discipline, just as finance is a discipline, marketing is a discipline, technology is a discipline. You wouldn't start a business as a non-tech founder and assume that you can run the tech side of the organization. You wouldn't assume that you can, run the finance side of the organization if you didn't have experience in that. Strategy and operations is a functional discipline that requires oversight, and it requires people to really focus in on, the importance of those things. If you want to be getting enough stuff done, like we've seen post-pandemic, a real drop in funding in early stage companies, and we see a lot more investors pushing for, if not profitability now, at least a path to profitability, at least an understanding that this organization could run by itself. The years of spending 100 million to make 50 million in revenue are thankfully on their way out. Certainly in the UK, we're seeing a real shift there. And, you know, part of operating efficiently is focusing on the right things at the right time. And that's a discipline. Making sure that you're prioritizing is a discipline. And I see a lot of organizations that don't understand, but it's not a criticism. You don't know what you don't know until you come across it. I didn't know all the different things I should be doing for marketing until I started working with you as an expert in marketing. And I think, yeah, absolutely, it's very much a gap of understanding of how a tool like this can completely transform your ability to get stuff done in an organization, to allow you to leave on time and maybe take an occasional holiday, which if you're a founder or a leader in an early stage company feels like an absolute rarity. But if you've got someone who can help you prioritize, and you've got a tool that can help you maintain that prioritization, you're on the path to actually being able to focus on the right things and to really push yourself towards those goals that are going to get you to your next fundraise, get you to your next element of your runway.
Yeah, I think that operations suffers a little bit, as marketing does, of being lumped in with other things.
Yeah.
Often it's finance and operations. We all know it's often sales and marketing.
Yes.
And I think as disciplines, they both suffer from anyone can do it type scenario. And so there isn't that belief that you need the expertise in operations, and certainly in marketing it's often like just tagged on, or it's seen as an admin-y task or things like that. So I think there's definite similarities there. So do you think that by having a tool like this, it goes to kind of increasing the value placed on operations within a business? So it's not just seen as a task list, but actually you can see strategically what you're trying to do.
Yes, absolutely. I work with a lot of early stage companies. I see a lot of businesses, and you know, it's an unfortunate case that a lot of those businesses aren't going to make it. It's not a criticism. I really don't mean that as a criticism of the founders that start these businesses. It's just a part of being in a startup. You know, the market can change very quickly, or, you know, you can fail to get funding for reasons that are so far outside of your control. And I think an emphasis and an understanding of what operations can do in an organization can really help you overcome a lot of those challenges. So I pulled some stats, because I'm the sort of person that loves to hang out on the Office of National Statistics. That's like a little bank holiday treat for me. And I
a little bit of fun.
It's really fun in my mind. About 62% of UK businesses will fail before their 5th year. So 800,000 new businesses started in the UK each year. So we're talking about 500,000 founders who are really excited about building their entrepreneurial dreams, who won't make it to the 5th year of operation. And of those companies that fail, about 35% of them fail to find product market fit. And product market fit for me is really just a strategic and focused perspective on doing the right things, answering the right questions, focusing on the right needs of your customers, which is such a massive part of your strategy. And I think if you start to think about the operations of your business and the tools that you're using to prioritize and focus as something that drives your capacity to hit product market fit, suddenly it feels a little bit more exciting and a little bit more important. You know, product market fit isn't just going out and finding those customers and saying, hey, have you heard about my product? It's about building that product to make sure that it's answering to their problems in the first place. That's operations. That's your strategy. That's you prioritizing, you know, the right questions. You don't want to find out 2 years down the line, when you can't find product market fit, that actually at the bottom of your task list from 2 years ago, you had a question to ask the customers that you didn't focus on because it got buried in all the other things that you were working on, when actually using a tool like Asana can make sure that today you're answering those questions before you figure out the other things that you need to do. I use Asana in Pay-as-you-go COO, and you know, I'm sure people would think, you know, a COO probably finishes their task list every day and probably has, you know, the most perfectly tidy task list in the world, and I have never once in my life ever gotten to the bottom of my task list, because I always start the day with too many things on my list. But it allows me to sit there and say, right, what do I have to get done today? What could be done tomorrow? Where does the business fall apart if I don't do this one thing? right, let's focus on those. Then I move the other tasks to tomorrow and I just close that down. And then tomorrow I'm going to look at that list and say, what do I have to get done today in order for this business to stay alive or to meet my obligations to my clients? Because I run my clients' projects in Asana as well, so that I'm always balancing everything with the biggest focus on things.
Yeah, I think that's the way. I think sometimes your focus on that is, obviously you're going to do that because you're an operations person, but I often say to clients, oh, I use such and such tool, and they're like, oh no, I don't want to use that. So then I end up in this situation of, oh, okay, fine, well, I'll use something else. So at any one time I'm like using 4 or 5 different tools, and I guess I struggle with that from a, like, well, how do I make sure that I'm getting done what I need to do, but I've obviously got to fit in within a function of their organization. So when it comes to other fractionals, do you have like advice on that? I guess that's a bit off piece, that question. It just came to me, but
no, I think it's a really
don't really
good
know how to manage that.
I think it's such a good question. I keep one central list of things that I need to do. So sometimes I will have an Asana project in my Asana that's for my clients' work. So say my business coaching clients, say for example, so the service side of my business is business coaching, which is hourly sessions that people can do once a week, once every other week, once a month. But then it's also the fractional COO. So fractional COO is like a day a week minimum. A lot of the time with the business coaching clients, they won't have we won't get our own Asana plan together. They'll have a project inside my Asana. And often with my COO clients, they will have their own Asana system, and I'll have an email address there and I'll work with them in there. So where you maybe have lots of different systems, I can often have lots of different instances of Asana, and you can't share tasks in between them. So it's effectively like many, many different discrete systems. So I create little hacks for myself where, so I've got client A has got their own Asana. I will have a note in mine that says check client A's Asana, so that I know these days I need to make sure that I'm going in there and I'm looking at those tasks, and it nudges me to make sure that I go in there and look at the right things. But then I also calendar block, so I make sure that you're saying if you're working with me, you're effectively buying a day a week or 2 days a week of my time. It's not always a whole day. Sometimes in an early stage company, it doesn't make sense for me to just work with you on a Monday. You want to work with me, say 4 days a week, but just a little bit of time across each of those days. So say you're doing 2 hours a day, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, as an example. I want to make sure I'm blocking my calendar to say that I'm doing this time with these people. So I do 4 times a week, I'll have a reminder in my Asana to be like, this is the time that you've got set aside for these people. Go in and check that Asana and work in there. And then when that time is finished, I can come back to my own Asana. I know it seems like a lot of...
So you physically, this is like mind-blowing for me. So you physically put in your Asana, even though you've time blocked in your calendar, you physically put in your Asana, go and check, marry the two things up, your calendar with your Asana. Yeah. So I think I make too much assumptions within my project management system. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. I absolutely time block, but I don't then have in my project management system on that day, go and do that. I just like, oh, now out in the universe, now is the time for me to be doing that. I'm not telling myself with the project management system. So it sounds like, and I take a punt that a lot of people are working it like I'm doing it and not how you're doing it. That to get to maximum efficiency with it, you need to be doing it how you're doing it.
I mean, I hate to say you need to be doing it how I'm doing it, because I think that's
along those lines.
Yeah, I think I've learned how to work in a way that suits my brain, and for me that's having one source of truth. And I think one centralized source of truth, one place where you know that if you go back to that every time you get distracted, you're refreshing your mind of what needs to be done. So say I was, I've got some in my calendar, some in Slack, I've got post-it notes over here. I get up from my desk and I go and make a coffee and I come back. Which one do I look at first to figure out which is the priority? The priority could be in system A, but I'm looking at system B because it's on my desk. if you have one place that you know every time, right, I'm going to go back to that system, I'm going to look at that list and just refresh myself, and then I can go into Slack and answer those messages. And I even have in my Asana list things like check this Slack channel. So I'm in a lot of different networks because I talk to a lot of different people about different things. So I have, like, say, every day, go and check Operations Nation Slack channel, go and check this customer Slack channel to make sure if messages have come through, that I can then push them into my one source of truth. So I think that's really part of the beauty of having a system like Asana or any project management system, is that there's one place that you go back to every time you get distracted to make sure that you are focusing on the thing that needs to be done. And that's why I'm so militant, but hopefully militant with a Y. It's like Millie's version of being militant. It's a very nice approach to being militant.
Yeah.
I'm so emphatic about keeping your communications inside Asana, because if I want to go to look for messages about something, I'm not going into Slack and then being distracted by a bunch of conversations that, you know, maybe are in the random channel or general channel, which is really, like, it's lovely. I really do genuinely want to see pictures of your puppies and kids, but actually I need to focus on this task. If everything is in Asana, then I'm seeing the messages and the task and the progress all in one place. And I think it's, you know, going back to that thing that I said about it being like blinkers that can help you focus in, because there's so much noise. You know, all of our dopamine systems are completely broken by social media. Our attention spans are atrocious. You know, when was the last time you watched a hour-long TV show and actually paid attention to the whole thing without thinking?
Now I can answer that.
Oh, I'm excited.
Last week I watched the last episode of Presumed Innocent. I don't know if you've watched it on Apple TV. Jake Gyllenhaal. Last episode, awesome. Did not look at my phone once.
That's impressive. That's impressive. I can't, you know, I can't go, even I don't use social media personally. I only use social media for work, and still I find myself getting distracted by, you know, LinkedIn, or by to check the news, or what's the weather going to be tomorrow. My brain is all over the place because I'm used to receiving information constantly, and it's where my dopamine is coming from, to then, you know, want to actually sit down and get into that really beautiful flow state of focus. I have to shut everything else down and just be in this one place where I can look at things.
All right. So I'm thinking, if you, what are your top 3 tips, if you like, for, say you're like me, you know, I'm quite organized, but I do go off at tangents, right? I do go off at tangents. So what's your top tips of staying the course on a project management system, getting more value from it, really? Because this has actually given me some really good ideas of how much more I need to put into mine, like literally like drink water, right? Because I forget. If I've got to tick it off every day, right, I know that I've done it, right? And there's only so long that me as a person can keep ticking something off if I haven't actually done it. So I obviously need to be a lot more prescriptive in how I'm doing it, but my feeling is that I'm going to push a little bit against that and rebel against that a little bit, just because I can. So what's your tip for how to sort of gradually progress to, you know, getting that operational discipline within your business, no matter how small it is? Because we know that with the discipline, you can do more. Once you can do more, you can scale. Mm-hmm. So what's your top tips for me and everybody else?
I like that you're forcing me to narrow down to top 3 so that people can, you know, have the rest of their day back, and we'll be here until the end of time. I think the first one is going to come off the back of something that you just said there, is that you're going to rebel against this system. But this system is your friend. This system is not here to judge you or shame you or to make you feel bad, nor is your COO, nor is your chief of staff, nor is your admin. Whoever is helping you operationalize your business is not the enemy. They are there to help you, because running a business is hard. It's so hard. You know, there's a lot of people give up because there's the sheer volume of things. Like if you think about that, you know, when you first set up your business and you had to make yourself a website and find an accountant and, you know, even register on Companies House, all of these different things are just little bits of friction of things that you've never experienced. And it's really, really difficult. someone who can help you not get overwhelmed with the amount of tasks that you've got going on. I promise you, as your friend, they may seem like the annoying person at Butlins with a clipboard that wants you to have only the organized fun. But organization is fun. Oh God, am I going to go and get a job at Butlins now and become a person with a clipboard? Because I think I've got the skills for it. So number one, I would say, like, think of this. This is your friend. This is not your foe. This is helping you to if the little bit of friction Monday to Friday afternoon can help you feel at the end of Friday like you can have Saturday and Sunday to switch off. That's the one benefit that you can take from, that friction that's making you feel like, oh, I've got this list of things that I have to do. But yeah, you've got this reward that's coming at the end of it. And that reward is downtime and a successful business. So I'd say number one, that. Number two, I would say break things down to the lowest common denominator. So every single action is something that you can make as a task. So you used a really great example there of drink water. That's a really clear thing that you could do. But, if you were building a project and your project was drink water, your tasks could be open cupboard, find water glass, make tap cold, put water in glass, add straw, add ice, then you can complete first sip. And you've done all those things that you can do. Because I see often people will put a task in for the day that's like launch marketing plan. If I said to you, launch marketing plan is one task, I mean, I can see your face. It's definitely not one task.
Yeah.
What are the
yeah.
Go into that? There's so many things. And the joy that you get from ticking off a single task, like adding that list of things, you can then take off that filter that you've put on that shows only the open task, and you can see, my God, I've done 20 things today. Look how much I've achieved today. Great. I'm switching off this evening. I'm going to watch Presumed Innocent or whatever the show was that I'm definitely going to get the name in our Asana plan from you later, because you've done all of these things. It's not necessarily your to-do list, it's your done list. Look how much I've achieved in this day, and it really makes it chunkable. So if I've got 5 minutes before a meeting, I'm not going to launch a marketing plan, but I can maybe hit refresh on my Ubersuggest keyword search or something like that. And then I've got one final one, but I'm interested to see, I think you had a point about the individual tasks.
No, it was such a little bit of a revelation there for me, because I mean, I would never put on a plan, on my project plan, launch marketing plan, right? But I do have the tendency to write like a thing that is way bigger, like write a task that is way bigger than the thing, if that makes sense. And so your example of breaking down the water, and I have actually been doing this a lot more recently, probably because I've been working with you, and you that's how you work. And so it's been a bit like, okay, I need to do that. So instead of just going post to social media on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, which we all know I haven't done, but there we go. Do as I say, not do as I do. Because I had a tendency to put in my project plan post to social media, whereas now I'm starting to go, think about, what's the content piece, write it, create a graphic if there is one, schedule it, post. So I am getting much more. So whilst I would never launch a marketing plan, but I do it for sort of smaller chunks. So I think that's a really good learning point with the illustration of the water.
And I think, do you remember we first started working together on my marketing plan? So for context, for our people joining us for the course, Caroline helps me with my marketing strategy and has been absolutely transformational in helping me to understand the things that I need to focus on. When I first started working with her, I had this plan that was like, I'm going to post every other day on LinkedIn. And Caroline said, like, why don't you try once a week? And, now I post every other day because we've built this system where, as you say, like, today's the day that I create the graphic. There's where I come up with the idea. There's where I schedule the thing, and there's where the post's gone. And, having that plan where you're doing a little tiny bit every day. I've missed very, very few posts since we've been doing this. And I've seen my what did we see the other day? It was something like 4,000% growth in impressions in the last 9 months, something like that. And now, 4,000% on something that was pretty low, because I wasn't using social media at all before I started to really think about marketing. But I'm pretty happy with those results from having given myself, these are the few things that I need to do today in order to get that result by the end of the week. And I think that leads nicely on to the final one tip that I will give is action verbs. I'm obsessed with action verbs in tasks. So launch marketing plan, whilst that's actually a project rather than a task itself, launch is very important there. So, you don't put into, if you and I were scheduling something in Buffer, you wouldn't just put Buffer post, you would put schedule Buffer post. Like, what's the thing that shows that this is done? There's so much subjectivity that comes into how people design their to-do lists that becomes, it's one thing when you're doing that by yourself, but as you start to grow a business and you start to bring on employees, you need to get rid of that subjectivity. For your employees to know that they're doing a good job, they need to understand that they've actually done or not done the thing. It needs to be binary. And, ticking something off when it doesn't have an action verb becomes a lot harder than when you say, if we go back to our water example, get glass, action verb, open cupboard, action verb, turn tap on. What is the thing that is the definition of success here? What is the action being complete that means that you can tick that thing off? And side note, when you tick things off in Asana, every so often there's a feature in there. I don't know if you've turned this on. Yeah, you can turn on.
Get a unicorn,
right? I'm a 39-year-old woman who gets very excited when a little graphic unicorn comes across my screen because I ticked off a certain number of tasks that day. I'm okay with admitting that makes me happy, because, building a business is hard. It's very lonely at the beginning when you're doing things by yourself, and being able to have just a little bit of extra delight in your day, like, good on you. You did tick off loads of tasks. Here's a unicorn. I think like that sense of achievement when you've done that thing because you knew that thing, what that thing was and what it needed to be done is, you can't. I probably need to leave the house more when I say that you can't beat that for excitement, but it's just really like
I would say possibly, but I've never thought of, honestly, that thing then about action verbs. Genius.
My tip for the day: get action verbs. So we are coming to the end of the time that we had set aside for this session. So I wanted to make sure that we had some time to talk about what the rest of Perfect Pair looks like, because please stop me, because I will talk about operations in Asana until the end of time. But we're focusing next week. So we've got six weeks, so 12 weeks, 6 every other week sessions, fortnightly for those in the UK. If you're listening in the US, I'm very sorry if you don't know what the word fortnight means, but become a Taylor Swift fan and you will learn soon what the word fortnight means. So what's coming up next in the Perfect Pair?
Next is marketing.
I'm very excited.
Yeah, I'm a bit stuck actually as to what tool to talk about.
Because there's so many.
Yes, because there's so many, and so I'm having difficulty paring it down. I don't know. I obviously need to think about it. So, but yeah, because there are so many, and in fact, when you look at a lot of the tools, there's email marketing tools, there's SEO tools, there's design tools, there's website, there's all sorts of stuff, and so I've got to pare it down to what's the one thing I don't think anyone can do without. And actually, as I've said that, I think I've decided on that basis what's the business, what is the one tool that no business can do without, so or should be doing without. So so marketing next, and then we're also going to cover finance. What else are we covering?
We've got finance, we've got tech, we've got I think sales. We've actually got a couple of spaces in the schedule. If there are fellow fractionals who are listening to this who are thinking, I've got a tool that could be amazing for you, get in touch. So you can either message us via Caroline's profile or mine or either of our websites. and get in touch. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on your favorite tool and how to implement that and why a service is necessary for that.
Sounds good. Yes, exactly. Yeah. We definitely always want to hear from fellow fractionals, and hopefully people have learned something from that session today. I mean, I've learned something, and we've been working together for ages. And even I am now like, okay, I clearly need to go and sort out my project management system. So
I mean, I'm absolutely here to help. And because I am such a dedicated COO, I'm getting anxious that we are 13 seconds over the time we set aside for people. And I'd love for them to get onto their lunch break because they've ticked off their Asana list and they can have this time to themselves.
Exactly.
We will wrap up here and say thank you, everybody, so much for joining us. I'm really excited for Caroline to lead the next session on marketing and talk to us all about the favorite tool that has popped into her head today as a confirmed choice.
All right. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.